Hi, my name's Elowen. Last Thanksgiving, I brought home a turkey and got handed an eviction instead. No warning, no kindness. Just a cold goodbye at the dinner table I paid for. But the worst part? That wasn't the beginning. It was years of silence, control, and quiet theft, until I finally said, enough. They thought I'd stay quiet, that I'd keep paying, keep bending, keep bleeding. So what really happened when I stopped? The last thing I expected was to be handed a verbal eviction notice while holding a warm casserole dish. I pulled into my parents' driveway, just as the late November sun dipped behind the church steeple at the far end of Ashbury's only Main Street. The sky was gray, the kind of color that made everything feel quieter. I parked carefully, as I always had, in the spot furthest from the porch, so Dad wouldn't say I was blocking his view of the mailbox. The pie box on the passenger seat had tipped sideways. I adjusted it and took a deep breath before heading up the steps. The wooden boards groaned under my boots, and for a second I almost turned around. Inside, the air was thick with the dry scent of overcooked turkey and burnt green bean casserole. It smelled like obligation. My father, Thayer, sat at the head of the table like he always did, arms crossed, face unreadable. Maribel, my mother, fluttered around with her usual fake busyness rearranging napkins that didn't need moving, opening and closing drawers like she was waiting for an excuse to be anywhere else. I set the pie on the counter next to the store-bought cranberry sauce I'd picked up on the way. No one looked up. No one said Happy Thanksgiving. Just the scrape of a fork across ceramic and the low hum of Thayer's old floor heater struggling against the cold. I pulled out a chair. No one told me where to sit, but that wasn't new. I'd grown used to being the extra limb no one asked for. I barely had time to place my napkin in my lap before Thayer cleared his throat and, without a glance, said, "You're too old to be freeloading. It's time you left." I thought I misheard. I looked up slowly. "What?" "You heard me," he said, slicing into the turkey like we were talking about the weather. "You've overstayed. It's time you got out." My fork hovered in midair. "I pay half the mortgage. I cover the internet, the gas bill, most of the groceries. Doesn't make this your home," he snapped. "Paying a few bills doesn't buy you a lifetime stay, princess." That word princess landed like a slap. I used to love it when he called me that. When I scraped my knees playing softball, he'd scoop me up and whisper, "My brave little princess." That was a long time ago. Now it was a weapon, a mockery. A reminder that I had once mattered, and now I was just a burden with a paycheck. I turned to my mother. She didn't meet my eyes, just stared down at her plate, chewing like she hadn't heard a thing. My throat tightened, but I didn't let the tears come. So that was the play. No warning, no discussion. Just blindsided over stuffing and stale rolls. A silent conspiracy with polite smiles. "Is this because I didn't go to Aunt Lila's last week?" I asked, trying to make sense of it. "Because I had work?" Thayer scoffed. "Always with the excuses. Work, stress, your deadlines. You've been taking advantage of this family long enough." My jaw clenched. Taking advantage? I've been supporting this house while you've been, what? Drinking beer and watching reruns in your recliner? Maribel flinched, but still said nothing. "This isn't your house," he said, voice rising just enough to send a message. "We let you stay because we felt sorry for you. But sympathy doesn't pay rent." "Neither do you," I muttered. He slammed his fist on the table. The plates rattled. Enough. That was the end of it. There was no yelling match, no drama, just a verdict delivered between dry bites of turkey and fake gratitude. A cold declaration that I didn't belong and hadn't for a long time. I pushed my chair back, stood up slowly. The air felt heavier with every breath. I walked to the kitchen, picked up the pie still warm and placed it gently on the counter. No one moved. Not a thank you. Not even a glance. They didn't just kick me out, I thought. They planned this. Chose Thanksgiving because it made them look like the victims. I looked back once. Just once. Thayer had already gone back to carving the turkey. Maribel picked at her casserole like nothing had happened. "I guess we're doing this?" I said out loud, voice calm even. No one answered. Outside, the wind had picked up. I wrapped my coat tighter around me as I walked to the car. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't hitch. But inside, something cracked. I started the engine, but didn't drive away immediately. I looked up at the house I'd once believed was a home. The faded shutters, the sagging porch, the light flickering in the upstairs window where I used to do homework late into the night. They didn't just kick me out of the house, I whispered, gripping the steering wheel. They kicked me out of the illusion that I was ever really loved here. I drove off into the dark, headlights cutting through the silence. There were no bags packed in the trunk, no grand plan, just a woman who had finally seen the truth and wasn't afraid to leave it behind. I didn't hit the gas right away. I sat there, the heater hissing against the cold air that had crept in through the cracked door. My hands didn't tremble, but my chest felt tight like something invisible had snapped, and now all the pressure was flooding in. I didn't cry, not out of strength, out of clarity. I drove aimlessly for a while, down streets I'd known since I was a kid, passing darkened storefronts and flickering porch lights. The town looked the same, but everything inside me was shifting. The diner on Harlow Street still had its neon open sign lit, casting a weak red glow onto the slush-covered pavement. I pulled into a space but didn't go inside. I sat there, engine off, watching a couple through the window laughing over pie. They think they ended something tonight, I murmured. They don't know him just getting started. I stayed in the car until my fingers felt stiff from the cold. Then I texted the only person I could trust not to ask questions, Isolde. 10 minutes later, I was at her place. She didn't ask anything when she opened the door, just stepped aside and said, "The couch is yours." That was all I needed. Once she went to bed, I set my bag down and pulled out my laptop. The kitchen light hummed overhead, and the silence felt like armor. I logged in. Power bill, cancel. Water, cancel. Gas, click. The screen blinked before confirming deactivation. One by one, I unplugged every cord that had tethered me to that house, that life. I moved on to the bank account joint checking, the one Maribel insisted we open just for family emergencies. I remembered the way she'd smiled when I agreed, like it was love. It wasn't, it was leverage. I transferred the funds to my private account, one I'd quietly opened last spring when I felt the first real shift in their behavior. I left them nothing. Then came the cars. Both still insured under my policy, because it made sense, because I was good with money, because that's what family does for each other. I removed both vehicles, confirming they'd be uninsured by Monday morning. I didn't flinch. With every confirmation click, I wasn't just walking away, I was extracting myself, cell by cell, from their narrative. I wasn't doing this to hurt them. I was doing this to reclaim what I gave without being asked, what they assumed belonged to them by default. I paused only once, staring at the utility history. Years of payments made from my account. Hundreds of dollars drained each month while Thayer sat in his recliner barking at game shows, and Maribel thumbed through catalogs she never ordered from. They said I was freeloading. I was the damn backbone. A memory slammed into me, uninvited. Me on the roof in a thunderstorm last spring, nailing shingles down while Thayer yelled out the window about how I was doing it wrong. My jeans soaked, my fingers numb. He never came out to help, just cracked open another beer and turned up the volume. Another one. Maribel calling me from a ditch, sobbing because she slid off the road. Her tires had been bald for months. I paid for the replacements, took a personal day, covered the tow. None of that was remembered tonight. None of it bought me a seat at their table. I didn't feel regret, just rage that had cooled into precision. I scrolled through the online accounts, highlighting each with a sense of finality. Netflix under my name, cable, Wi-Fi, gone. I could already hear Maribel screaming when her shows didn't load. I hoped she called the provider and heard, in a robotic voice, that the account was closed by the primary holder. Every severed tie wasn't petty. It was power coming home to roost. I took a break to drink water straight from the tap, leaning against Isolde's counter. Her apartment smelled like cinnamon and soap. Her cat watched me from the hallway, tail flicking, silently judging. I sat back down and opened the last item, the emergency account. The one I used to think made me noble. Selfless, family-oriented. The same account they quietly drained over the years, always with a good excuse. I froze it. Not deleted, just locked behind a wall of paperwork and identity verification they wouldn't navigate even if they tried. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I typed a single note in the memo section of the final transaction. They never saw it as help, just expected support. But I'm not their backup plan anymore. I closed the laptop, the faint click echoing louder than it should in the small kitchen. They kicked me out, but I walked away with everything that actually mattered: my autonomy, my choices, my voice. And now they'd feel the void I used to fill so quietly. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay on Isolde's couch, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender detergent and cat fur, staring at the ceiling, eyes wide in the dark. The hum of the refrigerator in the next room was the only sound. But in my mind, it was noisy memories clawing their way out, like they'd been waiting for the silence. By morning, my eyes were dry but heavy. I sat up slowly, wiped my face, not from tears, but from the weight of things I hadn't allowed myself to feel. Coffee was already brewing in the kitchen. Isolde had left a sticky note on the counter. "Take what you need. I've got you." I poured a cup, sat back down with my laptop, and pulled up an old folder I hadn't opened in over a year. Inside it was an email marked Denver offer. I remembered the day it came in like it had happened just last week. A 6-figure salary, a leadership position at a marketing firm I'd admired since grad school, relocation assistance, health benefits that made my eyes water, everything I had worked toward for nearly a decade. I'd even packed a suitcase. I'd mapped out apartments within walking distance of the office. I'd started dreaming, and then Maribel cried, "If you leave, your father will spiral. You know how he gets when you're not around." She sat on the edge of my bed, trembling. Real or performed, I couldn't tell. She clutched the frayed sleeve of her robe like it was a life raft. "You're abandoning us," she whispered, "right when we need you most. And Thayer?" He didn't say a word. But the next morning, my car wouldn't start. The battery had been unplugged. I found the cable lying in the grass under the hood, like someone didn't even try to hide it. I never made it to the interview. I never left. I told myself I'd reapply, wait for the next opening. But life, as they say, got in the way, and guilt, well, it never left. Sitting there now, cup warming my hands, I opened a second folder. This one held documents from last year, the time I tried to buy my own place. Loan denied. I hadn't understood why at first. My credit had always been decent, and my debt manageable. But when I pulled the report, there it was. A credit card I didn't remember opening. It was under my name, but the authorized user? Maribel. The balance? Just under $9,000. When I confronted her, she didn't even try to deny it. "You make more than us," she said, eyes wide, like I was the one being unreasonable. "It's not like we bought a yacht. We needed help. That's what family does." "But you didn't ask," I said, voice shaking. She rolled her eyes. "I didn't think I had to." I had paid off the card in silence. Not because I forgave her, but because the damage was already done. The house I'd wanted, gone. The interest rate spike, permanent. They didn't need to slam doors or scream insults. They just quietly clipped my wings until I forgot I had any. Every sacrifice I'd made, every dinner skipped, every birthday I spent working, every weekend spent fixing a leaky sink or negotiating with the electric company was rewritten in their minds as expected. Gratitude was never on the table, only expectation. I looked back at the email, the one from Denver. I'd saved it, even after I turned the offer down. I guess some part of me needed the reminder that I had once been wanted for more than my usefulness. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I thought I was being loyal, but loyalty built on fear isn't love, it's servitude." That line lingered in the room long after I said it. It hung in the air, soft but final. I leaned over and grabbed my phone, opened the credit monitoring app, and checked the latest report. The damage was still there, but smaller now. Manageable, fixable, and it was mine to fix. No one else would be touching it again. I scrolled through photos on my phone, landed on one from 4 years ago, standing beside the old Christmas tree, holding a mug, fake smile plastered on, while Thayer stared at the TV and Maribel unwrapped the present I had bought for her, pretending it was from him. That night, I'd cried myself to sleep, wondering why I still felt invisible. They took years from me. But they don't get tomorrow. Not anymore. The sun had just begun to slip behind the low rooftops of Ashbury when I sat down at the kitchen table in Isolde's apartment, with a yellow legal pad and a dull pencil. The evening light pooled across the hardwood floor, soft and amber, but I barely noticed it. I was deep in the kind of focus that only comes after a heartbreak you've accepted, not one you're trying to outrun. I'd already cut the cords, the utilities, the credit lines, the joint insurance, all severed, but something kept nagging at the back of my mind like an itch I couldn't reach. A hunch, or maybe just experience whispering, "You missed something." So I started listing every account I'd ever had with my name on it alone or shared. Cell phone, yes. Auto loan handled. Bank. That's where I paused. The joint checking account. I hadn't used it in almost a year. I'd moved most of my savings to a personal account after the credit card mess with Maribel. But that backup account still had both our names on it. I'd left it open, partly out of habit, and partly because, if I am being honest, I still hadn't fully let go. I pulled it up online, entered the login I hadn't used in months, and there it was. A charge for $340 at a liquor store on the edge of town, another for $112 at a tire shop, a $29 recurring gym membership fee. I stared at the screen in silence, my pulse flattening, not rising. This wasn't rage. It was recognition. Thayer hadn't been to a gym since I was in high school. The last time he worked out, I still had braces and thought Friday night pizza meant we were bonding. And the tire shop? That wasn't even the one I used to go to. It was his. Always had been. I clicked further back. More withdrawals, more patterns. The account I thought of as inactive was anything but. It had become his personal piggy bank, my name still tied to the account, my silence mistaken for consent. And then it clicked. I remembered the night we opened that account. I was 26, just landed my first full-time job. Thayer had said, "Every family needs a backup, in case of emergencies." He insisted my name be listed as the primary, said he didn't trust himself to stay organized. Back then, I believed it was his version of transparency. Now I saw it for what it was, a carefully staged handover of control masked as vulnerability. When I brought it up last year, just gently, not accusing, he'd scoffed. "It's all family money, Elowen. Don't be dramatic. You act like we're stealing." And I'd let it go, because that's what they trained me to do, question myself first. Now I was done questioning. I grabbed my purse, keys, and headed for the credit union down on Main Street. It was a short drive, but I took the long way looping past the library, the old diner, the pharmacy with the flickering neon sign. Ashbury didn't change much, but I had. The woman at the bank recognized me. Her name tag read, Denise. She greeted me like I was still the girl who used to drop off deposit slips for Maribel when I was a teenager. "I need to freeze a joint account," I said, voice calm, "and remove a co-holder." Denise blinked. "Family account? Not anymore." The process was straightforward. ID, digital signature, a form or two. I changed the email address, requested a new card, and canceled the old one. Denise didn't ask why, but when she handed me the receipt, she said, "Sometimes doing what's right for you means leaving people behind who never saw you in the first place." I walked out into the chill evening air and didn't look back. Back at Isolde's, I scribbled a note to myself on the same yellow legal pad. They made plans with money that wasn't theirs. Now they'll learn what empty means. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't revenge. It was release. Just past midnight, my phone buzzed a text alert from the bank. Auto withdrawal failed. Insufficient funds. I smiled, not in cruelty, but with peace. I didn't scream. I didn't warn them. But now they'd know I was done being their fallback plan. I woke to the buzz of my phone vibrating against the nightstand. A groggy glance told me it was 6:17 a.m. The sun hadn't cracked through the blinds yet, but the calls had already started. 8 missed calls. 2 voicemails. No texts. Just silence wrapped in noise. I didn't need to listen to know who it was. Thayer always called first thing in the morning when he wanted to catch me before I got in one of my moods, as he liked to phrase it. That usually meant before I'd had time to think for myself. Maribel? She preferred voicemails, long ones, drenched in trembling tones and words like betrayal, family, and disappointment. I tapped play on the first one. Her voice slid out of the speaker, syrupy and tight. "We're still your family, Elowen, no matter how mad you are. Please, baby, just call back. We can work this out. We always do." "No, you just pretend nothing happened until I forget why I was angry." That's not resolution. That's erasure. The second voicemail, predictably, was Thayer's. I hope you're proud of yourself, turning your back on blood. You think money makes you right? You'll regret this. Don't say I didn't warn you. There it was. Love, laced with a threat. I deleted both voicemails without saving them. No hesitation. My thumb didn't even shake. Then I texted Isolde. They're panicking. I'm not. She replied with a single word. Progress. I stayed in bed a little longer, watching the ceiling fans spin in slow circles, thinking about how many years I'd spent chasing their approval. Every phone call I'd answered on the first ring. Every plane ticket booked last minute for family emergencies that turned out to be guilt traps. Every weekend, I canceled plans just to be present for people who only ever noticed when I was useful. Not anymore. That afternoon, I met Caleb for coffee. He was back in town for a short visit, and catching up felt like another small reclamation of my own life. We found a booth in the back of the cafe, warm light spilling from the Edison bulbs overhead. You look good, he said. Lighter. I'm trying to be, I replied, offering a small smile. It's been a month. He nodded, sipped his latte, then paused. I ran into Micah a couple weeks ago. I blinked. Micah. 2 years ago, I thought I was going to marry that man. Then he disappeared. No argument, no explanation. 1 week we were apartment hunting, the next he was gone. Caleb didn't notice my hesitation. He mentioned something weird, he continued, eyes cautious. Said your mom told him you were unstable, that you were struggling financially and might drag him down. It felt like someone poured ice water straight into my lungs. What? He said she cornered him at a farmer's market, told him you had unresolved issues, that he deserved someone more stable, more grateful. I couldn't speak. I just stared down into my untouched tea, hands frozen. I'd spent months blaming myself. I thought I'd pushed him away, been too guarded, too closed off. I believed in the quiet of my worst nights that maybe I wasn't worth loving, that maybe I had ruined it. And all this time it wasn't me. It was her. Maribel had gone behind my back not to protect me, not out of concern, but to sabotage something good. Something that would have made me more independent, harder to control. Are you okay? Caleb asked softly. I nodded once. Thanks for telling me. I needed to know. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call Micah or write a scathing letter to my mother. I wrote a message, not to send, just to write. If someone shows you they're willing to ruin your happiness to keep you dependent, believe them. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't dramatic. It was true. And it was the kind of truth I'd spent too many years avoiding. I copied the sentence into my notes app, titled it Rules for My Future. A new section in a life I was rewriting, one honest line at a time. At 9:43 p.m., another voicemail came in. I watched the phone ring, didn't flinch, didn't even open the app to listen. I blocked both numbers, not out of anger, out of clarity. They'd had my attention for decades. Now they had my silence. And silence? Silence is a decision, not a retreat. I stood by the window, looking out over the sleepy street below. Somewhere in that quiet, I felt something shift, not loudly, not with fireworks or applause, but with finality. They played their cards. Now it was my turn, and I wasn't bluffing. The next morning came quietly, no calls, no buzzing from blocked numbers. For the first time in weeks, my phone felt like mine again, until a notification popped up from an unexpected place. Facebook. It wasn't a friend request or a memory alert. It was a message with a screenshot, sent from someone I barely spoke to in town. Hey, saw this and thought you should know. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. There, in full view of hundreds, maybe thousands, was a post from Thayer in the Ashbury community group, a public thread, a pity-fueled monologue. Some daughters forget who raised them, were sick, hungry, abandoned. I never thought the child I poured my life into would leave her aging parents in the cold. There were dozens of comments already. Old neighbors, church folks, former co-workers of his. So sorry, Thayer. Praying for healing. Kids these days have no heart. If you need anything, let us know. I stared at the screen, unmoving. It wasn't just a Lee, it was a trap. A manipulation masterpiece painted in vulnerability and weaponized shame. I whispered aloud, voice flat but sure. They're using sympathy as a shield. Ill-use facts as a sword. I didn't rush. I didn't cry. I didn't throw my phone or pace the room. Instead, I reached under the bed for a storage box I'd quietly added to over the years. Labeled in permanent marker, receipts, literal and metaphorical. I opened my laptop and spread the contents across the Bedivere utility bill from the past 6 years in my name. Auto payments, gas and water, cell phone statements, repair receipts from the winter the pipes burst, and I was the one who paid for emergency service, not Thayer. I copied scans into a folder, labeled each image by date. Bank transfers? Documented. Checks written from my account to theirs? Screenshotted. Emails from Maribel asking for just a little help this month because they were short again? Saved. I didn't just build a response. I built a timeline. A picture that showed who had really been abandoned and by whom. At 1:13 p.m., I posted. No flourish, no rage, just facts. I've stayed quiet out of love. But since this story's now public, let me clarify a few things. Then I laid it out. Paid electric bill. $187.42 under my name. Car insurance, 2 vehicles. Drafted monthly from my checking emergency roof repair. Covered in full by me last December food, medical copays, even dog grooming for a pet they wouldn't let me name I ended with. They didn't lose a daughter. They lost the person who kept their lights on. It wasn't venomous. It was surgical. A neighbor named Darlene commented within minutes. I saw her patching that roof in the freezing cold. He just yelled from inside not to drop the hammer again. Then another post from someone who used to run the pharmacy. She always picked up their meds, paid in cash. No one ever mentioned that part. Like a tide, the narrative began to shift. Ashbury was small. Reputation ran deeper than blood. People remembered who shoveled their sidewalks in winter, who offered rides when someone's car broke down, who kept their head down and carried burdens no one asked about. I never asked for this war, but they brought it to my front porch and rang the doorbell. So I answered with proof. By nightfall, my post had more engagement than Thayer's ever did. Not that it mattered. He didn't post again. Neither did Maribel. Their silence online echoed the silence I now maintained in real life. I didn't respond to comments. Didn't ride the wave. I'd said what I needed to. That was enough. The house I grew up in? The image of it no longer hurt. Not because I'd forgiven, but because it no longer controlled the narrative of who I was. At 11:47 p.m., I turned off notifications, closed my laptop, and sat in the dark with a mug of tea in hand. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that used to scare me. Not anymore. There's a silence that comes from being ignored, and one that comes from choosing not to engage. I had chosen the second. They'd painted me as cruel, cold, disloyal, and I had replied not with venom, not with sob stories, but with the truth. If they wanted a war, they were about to see I came with receipts. The envelope was there when I opened the door, a manila slab of silence left at my feet like a threat that didn't need words. No knock, no courier. Just wait. I didn't open it right away. I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stared. The last time I'd seen my name typed that formally was a college acceptance letter. This time it was bolded on legal letterhead. Plaintiff Thayer and Maribel Connors. Defendant Elowyn Connors. Allegations, elder neglect, financial exploitation, emotional cruelty. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because they'd finally outdone themselves. After everything they took, twisted, taunted, they now wanted the system to clean up the story they'd made a mess of. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted revenge dressed in Sunday best. I whispered into the empty room, "They've gone nuclear." And I knew what that meant. I had to meet them there. By noon, I was on a Zoom call with legal aid in St. Louis. The woman who picked up Kay had kind eyes and a sharp tone. She transferred me to Jace, a paralegal who looked young enough to still be paying off undergrad loans, but had the steel nerves of someone who'd seen messier family implosions than mine. He listened without interrupting, scanned the PDF ID uploaded before the call even connected, scrolled silently, then looked back up at me through the screen. "Elowyn," he said, "this isn't just defense. This is a counterattack waiting to happen. We worked fast. Every folder I'd created financial records, screenshots, dates, times became ammunition. Every please help email from Maribel. Every just cover it this time Venmo memo, even the Facebook thread, which had since been deleted but screen captured in full. We filed our motion within the week, counterclaim defamation, malicious prosecution, misuse of shared financial accounts. The court date was set. A month later, I stood in a courthouse that smelled like old carpet and cold metal. My name echoed through the hallway as they called the case. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't rise. I walked in wearing the only suit I owned, hair pulled back, documents in hand. Thayer was already there, sitting like a pastor about to deliver a sermon. Maribel clutched tissues she didn't need yet. Theatrics came early in their show. They brought binders. My team brought facts. When the judge called for opening statements, Thayer's attorney stood and introduced Exhibit A screenshots of alleged texts between me and my father. Messages that proved I knew about their financial suffering. Messages that confirmed I'd refused to help. Messages where I apparently typed, "You two deserve to rot. You got what you had coming." I didn't even blink. My lawyer, Carmen, didn't object immediately. She waited, let the courtroom sit in that lie for exactly 9 seconds, then said, "Your Honor, we ask to introduce Exhibit C." Jace stood, wheeled a small monitor to the front, and tapped the screen. Metadata, file path logs, app overlay detection, translation for the room. Those messages? Created in a fake texting app, time-stamped 2 weeks ago, not pulled from a phone, built from scratch. Gasps filled the room. Maribel finally used the tissue. The judge asked for silence, then slammed his gavel. Thayer's face didn't flinch, but his lawyer began sweating. The rest of the hearing blurred into specifics. Depositions, bank account audits, witness testimonies, screenshots backed by receipts. By the end, the judge didn't issue a ruling, said he needed more time. But the room had already shifted. Outside the courthouse, the October wind hit harder than I remembered. But it was clean. Honest. I closed my eyes and breathed it in. Jace joined me on the steps. "You know," he said, "a lot of people don't fight back. They just try to survive the noise." "I didn't have that luxury," I said. "They made this war public. I made the truth louder." He nodded. "That's the thing about family. When they lie long enough, they forget some of us learned how to write things down." We didn't shake hands. Didn't need to. I walked back to my car with no need for closure, just a next step. Because the court saw the truth. But now it was time for everyone else to feel it. By the time I got back to Isolde's, my boots were soaked, my fingertips cold, and my thoughts sharper than they'd been in weeks. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need them. Instead, I dropped my coat, rolled up my sleeves, and opened my laptop. The courtroom had seen the truth. That wasn't enough. Not for a town that lived on gossip, not for a family that only cared when someone else was watching. So I created a folder, Google Drive, public link, titled it, "Since They Want to Talk Publicly, Here's the Full Story." There was no commentary, no dramatic captions, just cold, verifiable facts. Screenshots of mortgage payments in my name, property tax stubs signed by me, the auto-renew notices for their health insurance, the service contracts for plumbing, roofing, pest control. The old voicemail from Maribel sobbing because Thayer had lost track of rent again and ID paid it to keep the power on. All of it. I organized the files by year. I timestamped everything. No manipulation, just documentation. Then I posted the link on the same Ashbury community group where Thayer had weaponized Facebook weeks ago. That was it. No quote, no emojis, no hashtags. Truth doesn't need decoration. I closed the laptop and walked into the kitchen to boil water. By the time the kettle whistled, my phone buzzed with the first ping of notification. I didn't reach for it. Instead, I poured tea, added honey, and waited. Not for their response, but for the silence that would come after. The next morning, I woke to over 24 missed calls. But it was the headline on my feed that stopped me mid-sip. Ashbury family drama goes viral, daughter's docs spark townwide reckoning. The article didn't quote me. Didn't need to. It quoted the receipts. I scrolled further and saw a video. Maribel, shaky camera, dim kitchen light behind her, casting too much shadow. She clutched a tissue and spoke with that voice soothing, motherly, almost believable. "We're just hurt," she said. "She's our daughter. We didn't know she felt that way. We never meant to hurt her." She sniffled, dabbed at a dry cheek. "It was all love. Maybe we got it wrong, but it was love." The comments came fast. "Then why lie about her in court? Love doesn't sue. Sounds like you're sorry you got caught." Someone reposted my Google Drive link right beneath the video. No caption, no insult. Just a hyperlink, like a mirror held up to a mask. By noon, the ripple had become a wave. Thayer was quietly removed from the church volunteer board. I heard through Isolde that the pastor had called it a conflict of spiritual integrity. Maribel's bridge club canceled the next game, then the next month's, then sent her a message. We're rotating hosts. We'll let you know if we need anything. I didn't cheer. This wasn't a win. It wasn't revenge. It was air returning to a space that had long been suffocating. Isolde texted, "This is the quiet part, right? Where you breathe again?" I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back, "It's where I stop bleeding." I meant it. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt level. Later that afternoon, I took a walk through downtown. The breeze had lost its bite. The trees were in that golden phase before bare branches, flame-colored and fleeting. I passed the library where I used to volunteer, the diner where I'd once met Micah, the hardware store Thayer never paid for when I bought him new tools he never used. No one stopped me. No one whispered. People nodded. One woman even offered a small smile. For the first time in my life, silence didn't feel like exile. It felt like arrival. I paused at the crosswalk, watching the light change, and I thought not about them, but about me. Who was I, now that they no longer defined me? Not just the girl who kept the lights on, not the daughter who stayed too long, someone rebuilding from rubble, but not bitterly, not desperately, intentionally. They lost a daughter who stayed quiet for too long. Now I had to decide what kind of woman I wanted to become. The apartment was small, the kind with crooked baseboards and paint that didn't quite reach the corners, but it was mine. Entirely mine. I signed the lease with a pen that barely worked and didn't care. The duplex was tucked into an older block just east of downtown St. Louis. It had a view of a half-dead elm tree and a laundromat sign that flickered when it rained. The windows stuck in the mornings, and the shower had exactly one pressure setting aggressive. But when I turned the key and stepped inside for the first time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt clean. Whole. Like it opened a book and the pages hadn't been dog-eared yet. The first thing I unpacked was a tiny bookshelf I'd carried from apartment to apartment since college. I lined it with cookbooks I rarely used, old journals I never reread, and one worn novel I always returned to when I didn't know who I was. Then came the coffee maker. Brand new, black matte. Cost more than I should have spent, but worth every cent. The first pot smelled like cinnamon. Not because of any special blend, just because I'd added it to the grounds. Because I could. Because no one was standing over my shoulder telling me it was a waste, or asking why I didn't use the money for something useful. This place didn't just look different. It felt untouched by them. A week passed quietly. I found myself opening the blinds more, walking barefoot on the creaky tile, taking long showers just because I could. I stopped checking my phone every hour. And that's when the email came. A neighbor back in Ashbury, someone I barely knew, sent a short message. "Lights haven't been on at your parents' place for days. Thought you'd want to know." I didn't answer right away. I let it sit in my inbox while I folded laundry and organized my closet. But later, curiosity tugged. I clicked the email open again and scrolled through the forwarded thread. There were whispers. Thayer had been denied a loan at the local credit union, tried to refinance something. Maybe the house. Denied flat. Rumor was, his credit was a mess. Maribel had been seen at a second-hand shop downtown trying to sell jewelry. Pieces I recognized from family photo skiffs I'd bought her over the years, when I still believed buying love was better than having none at all. No one defended them this time. Not the neighbors, not their friends. They'd run out of goodwill, out of stories, out of daughters to hide behind. I didn't gloat. That was never the point. I whispered, more to myself than to anyone. I didn't want them destroyed, just disconnected. There was a difference. That evening I dug through a box labeled Thanksgiving stuff that Isolde had helped me pack. Tucked in between old cloth napkins and a cracked gravy boat was the plastic cake topper from last year. The one I'd bought when I tried to make dessert feel celebratory, even as the house turned cold. I turned it over in my hand once, then dropped it in the trash. Gone. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a maple leaf I'd pressed between two books weeks ago. Burnt red, curled at the edges, still beautiful. I taped it into my journal. Wrote one sentence beneath it. This year, I gave thanks for myself. Simple, whole, enough. The next day, I confirmed a job interview with a nonprofit downtown. Something small, communications work, nothing flashy but meaningful. Mine. Isolde and I made dinner plans for Friday Thai food and bad reality TV. I hadn't reread a single voicemail in over a week. I no longer waited for the apology that would never come. No longer paused when I heard my mother's ringtone echo from a stranger's phone. They weren't villains in my life anymore. They weren't anything. I didn't forgive them. Not entirely. But I no longer built my days around their ghosts. They'd raised a daughter who stayed too long, who gave too much, who mistook silence for peace and control for love. But they made a woman who left. And that woman? She built something better without them. Even now, with the dust settled and the noise gone, I don't look back in anger, I look back in clarity. I used to think silence made me strong. That surviving quietly was noble, but survival is not the same as living. And no one, not even your parents, has the right to define your worth or weaponize your loyalty. I didn't walk away because I hated them. I walked away because I finally loved myself enough to stop bleeding for people who kept handing me the knife. And maybe that's the hardest part. Realizing that healing doesn't mean getting an apology. It means choosing yourself anyway. So if you're watching this, and you've ever felt trapped, dismissed, or erased by the people who were supposed to love you the most, I see you. I've been you. And I'm telling you, there's life on the other side. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you thought would never hurt you? Do you believe setting boundaries makes you cruel or courageous? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If this story hit close to home, drop a 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far this truth travels. And if you didn't like this video, that's okay too. Tell me why. Let's talk about it. This space is for real stories and real people. If this story made you feel seen, inspired, or just a little braver, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. You never know who might need to hear your story next.
It's hard to believe that such a thing still happens these days. I found myself thinking vaguely about it in the narrow hallway of my apartment. There was a thick envelope on the small showbox. Inside it was payoff money. I had a girlfriend. Her name was Michelle. She was the only daughter of the chairman of the Johnson General Hospital, one of the largest hospitals in town. Last night, I proposed to Michelle, and this is the result. Suddenly, Michelle's father showed up at my apartment and looked at me as if I were trash. He said, "I won't let my daughter marry an uneducated loser." Then, saying it's payoff money, he left a thick envelope on the table. Michelle seems to have had her cell phone taken away by her father, so I can't get in touch with her. Just like that, my relationship with Michelle abruptly ended. My name is Rick, and I turned 32 this year. Currently, I'm the vice president of a gaming company I started with a friend. There were a lot of ups and downs to get here, but I believe everything has been a learning experience for me. Deep in my heart, there are things that I've yet to fully come to terms with. My father passed away when I was young, and my mother raised me on her own. Ever since middle school, I wanted to start working early. Being the eldest son, I have 3 younger sisters. When I told my mom that I had decided to quit high school and work while attending night school, she looked at me with guilt and bowed deeply to me. It wasn't that I loved studying, but telling her about the night school was more of an excuse to make her understand. I remember feeling humbled when she bowed so deeply. Together, my mom and I supported our family, ensuring my sisters could follow their desired paths. That gave me a lot of confidence. In the end, I kept working at a florist that I've been part of since my part-time days. That's when I first met Michelle. I think I was 25 and she was 22. Every Monday and Thursday afternoon, she would come into the shop to buy fresh flowers. She never bought large bouquets, just a few stems, and then she'd leave. We'd exchange a few words every time. Little by little, I found myself drawn to her shy and modest character. Michelle is the kind of girl you don't often see these days, with a quiet, reserved, and pure demeanour. Even someone as thick-skinned as me could immediately tell from the way she carried herself that she came from a good upbringing. On Valentine's Day, when she gave me chocolates, I realized for the first time that she had feelings for me. I asked her out right then and there. Our relationship was smooth sailing. We never had an argument. Life was hectic for me. Being invited to co-found a business by a friend might have been a contributing factor. The only time Michelle and I could really meet was on Sundays. With my sister still in school and tuition fees to pay, I didn't have a lot of money for myself. Our dates were mostly in the park. Every time, Michelle would bring along a homemade lunch, and we'd spend our time in the park. I loved that. After dating for a year, I mustered up the courage to propose to her. I felt that if Michelle stayed by my side for the rest of my life, I could push myself many times harder. I couldn't afford a ring worth 3 months of my salary and got her a cheaper one, but Michelle cried tears of joy after she saw it. She kept repeating, "Thank you." I swore I'd make her happy, but by the next morning, I felt like I'd been thrown into hell. The last time I saw Michelle, she had a tear-streaked face from crying with happiness. Our time together ended right there. Starting today, we have a few new recruits coming in. I was approached by HR as soon as I arrived at the office. The company had grown unimaginably since its inception, with almost 30 employees. After my heartbreak, I got seriously involved in a startup with a friend. He founded a gaming company. I've always loved games, and after seeing a game I created, he approached me to co-found the company. I dedicated myself to this job. The company grew rapidly. Now we're focusing on nurturing esports talents. My current job involves scouting esports players. It's quite a fulfilling job. Many young folks aspire to be professional esports players, but taking that first step can be challenging. I believe it's because its recognition in society is still somewhat limited. When job prospects come up, I bet very few parents would understand if their child says, "I want to be a pro gamer." Many kids are already making money by streaming games, but few share that with their parents. Streamers who make a living off game streaming need to put in the effort to make others understand their line of work. I support those kids who feel stuck because those around them don't understand what they're passionate about. I believe my job is to back their dreams. The recruits coming in today are between 18 and 26 years old. We plan to hire them as professionals. Among them, there's one guy I see as a key player. His name is Key. He's a player who excels in multiplayer online battle arenas, MOBA. Simply put, MOBA is a game style where you team up and cooperate with allies to attack and conquer the enemy's base. It requires both strategy and ability to make split-second decisions. I felt Key had an exceptional talent. "I'm Key Johnson. It is a pleasure to meet you all," he said, introducing himself. He's tall and good-looking, although he seemed a bit rough around the edges. The way he responded and carried himself showed he came from a good upbringing. A good young man. The women in the office were clearly impressed by him. After a brief greeting, Key started handling insurance paperwork and other administrative tasks in the HR department. It's a busy day since there are other new hires, and each needs to be directed to their respective departments. That's when I overheard a surprised voice from one of the female clerks. My feet stopped dead in their tracks when the clerk said, He's the son of the Johnson General Hospital chairman. You know, Johnson General Hospital is the home of a girl like... Can't forget Michelle. I remember Michelle mentioning that she's an only daughter with one younger brother who doesn't have the inclination or aptitude for medical studies. Now I understand why Michelle's dad told me her future husband has to be a doctor. It might be pointless to think about it now, but if Key had gone to med school and become a doctor, maybe Michelle, and I could have gotten married. I was called an uneducated trash. The opposition to our marriage wasn't just because of inheritance issues. I admit that I had my own shortcomings, yet I couldn't help but wonder what if I had become a doctor. A fact I never realized when I first scouted Key. Would I have recruited him if I'd known he was Michelle's brother? Mixing personal feelings with business is downright unacceptable. I kept reminding myself of that. Otherwise, I couldn't imagine supporting Key's dream. Key, as I thought, immediately became a vital member of our team. At the welcome party, he introduced himself, saying he was the son of a hospital chairman, but couldn't give up his dream, so he left. Everyone gave him a warm applause for his determination. I clapped along, but something still felt off. You don't go home, you live alone, right? I casually inquired about his personal life during the party. I've cut ties with my family. When I said I didn't want to become a doctor, they disowned me. I think my sister will have to marry someone taking over the hospital, Keith mumbled. I do feel a bit guilty about my sister watching him. I felt a burning anger rise within me. Must be tough for your sister, all because you decided to be selfish. She's taking all the heat because of you, isn't she? Even I thought it was a mean thing to say. At that moment, I couldn't control my emotions. I harshly lashed out at a man almost a decade younger than me. Keith flinched slightly but firmly said, I don't regret it. I know my dream might have come at someone else's expense, but I can't give up. The thought of giving up never even crossed my mind. That's the determination I bring here. Key spoke of his determination. I wished I could blame him for distorting the future Rochelle, and I could have had. Such pettiness made me ashamed of myself. Still, the unresolved feelings continued to smoulder within me. In esports, maintaining concentration amidst high tension is crucial, especially in the game Keith plays. This is essential. It's the same even in regular practice matches. There's constant competition within the team, no different from any other sport. Only the best among the team get to play in matches. Those who can't produce results get phased out. That's the world of professionals. Many push themselves too hard and get sick. It's our job to guide them so that doesn't happen. Keith has a touch of genius, but he never forgets to work hard. I deeply wanted to support him, but I felt ashamed of my inability to do so. Then the incident happened. It was Keith's official debut match, a big tournament with a large number of participating teams. It was a knockout format. Keith's team kept on winning. With the lights dimmed in the venue, a large monitor lit up. Players sat in front of computers engrossed in their game, surrounded by a large audience. They had to keep their composure during the match. If they let the pressure get to them, they'd lose. Holding my breath, I closely watched Keith's character across the screen. Then it seemed like Keith, seated in his chair, tilted his head slightly. The next moment, with a crashing sound, Keith fell from his chair to the ground. On the screen, the character controlled by Keith stood still as the opposing team attacked. "Are you okay, Keith?" I rushed over to find Keith gasping for breath on the floor. An ambulance was immediately called. When it arrived, I ended up riding with him. The paramedic told me we're heading to the Johnson General Hospital's emergency room. I was a bit surprised. It seems there is a mysterious connection between the Johnsons and me. I tried to avoid it, but it felt like I was drawing this fate closer. I felt uneasy when he was brought into the emergency room. I waited outside the treatment room. Suddenly, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps approaching down the hallway. I didn't want to assume, but I couldn't help but feel tense. My suspicions were confirmed. It was Michelle, now grown into a mature woman. She walked toward me with a pale face. She must have been taught not to run in the hospital corridors since she was a child. A frustrated frown creased her forehead. "You're from Keith's company, right? Where's Keith?" "How's Keith doing?" she said, looking at the treatment room's door, completely unaware of my presence. She was looking at the door and didn't notice me at all. She was clearly worried about her younger brother and seemed too preoccupied to notice anything else. I felt bad for Kay, but my heart braced more for Michelle. He just went into the treatment room. I managed to answer, and Michelle's slender shoulders shuddered. Then, with great force, she turned to me. Her white eyes looked as if they could overflow with tears, staring deep into mine. "Is it Rick?" Her voice trembled as she asked. I nodded confidently in response. "It's been a while. Who would have thought we'd meet like this?" Michelle looked like she was about to burst into tears any moment. I was frozen, not knowing what to do. The tension between us was broken by the nurse's invitation. "Please come in." Normally, only family would be allowed in. "Can I come in too?" I'm really worried. When I asked, Michelle gave a small nod in agreement. Keith was lying in bed with an IV drip. He looked much better, which was a bit relieving. "Doctor, how's he doing? Is he going to be okay?" Michelle, clutching the hem of my jacket, looked up with concern. I spoke up on her behalf, addressing the doctor. "The doctor said he's overworked, probably pushed himself too hard, lack of sleep, not eating right, gaming all night. I suppose the decision was to keep him overnight for observation." We both felt relieved that it wasn't more serious. The patient himself, Heath, was soundly asleep. "I'll go grab some things he'll need for the overnight stay." Thinking Michelle should stay by Keith's side, I made the offer. "Could you? Thank you so much." To reassure Michelle, I grinned and said, "Leave it to me." Seeing that Michelle's face softened a little, that's when it happened. Suddenly, the treatment room door was flung open. The loud bang startled everyone inside, including the nurses. Keith, always causing trouble, entering with a loud shout, was Dr. Johnson in a white coat. He was Michelle and Keith's father. He was, without a doubt, my archenemy. And overworking, after all the talk, and leaving the house like that. Should have listened to me and become a doctor. He grabbed Keith's collar and started shaking him. The nurses rushed to intervene. This isn't how a doctor should behave towards a patient. A nurse trying to intervene, Dr. Johnson, raised his hand to strike Keith and shouted, "Wake up." Without thinking, I grabbed his arm. "Stay out of it. This is a family matter." The annoyed doctor started yelling at me. I had no intention of letting go. With all due respect, that doesn't look like a family matter to me. Keith is one of our best. I'd appreciate it if you refrain from violence. Hearing that, Dr. Johnson looked at me immediately. His eyes widened, and his mouth twisted in shock. It seemed that he finally recognized who I was. "You dare to deceive my daughter, and now my precious son too, you uneducated piece of trash." The doctor's words ignited memories of my past anger. But I'm not the same person I was back then. I won't be shaken by such remarks. As the doctor and I locked eyes, Keith woke up. "Wait, Dad, sis. I wasn't in the middle of a game. Struggling to grasp the situation, Keith's confusion was evident. I gently embraced him, explaining that he had collapsed and was brought to the hospital. Keith, get back home now. I can still get you into a decent medical school. You wouldn't go wrong if you just listened to me. The doctor's harsh rebuke made Keith bite his lip. Always being dictated and controlled like this, that's probably why he ran away, I thought. Keith's an adult now. He makes his own decisions. Your children have grown beyond your reach. I positioned myself between Keith and the doctor, shielding both Michelle and Keith. The doctor's face, filled with anger, grabbed at my collar. You seem rather bold now. You can't hide that you quickly bailed out on my daughter with that payoff money, Michelle gasped and said from behind me. That money was returned to you ages ago. I replied with a provocative smirk. The doctor shouted, You're lying. Dad, aren't you familiar with Rick's company? They've been generously donating every year. Keith's voice reflected his growing impatience. What? What are you talking about? Donations every year. You can't be serious. I brushed off the doctor's hand, presenting my business card once again. Recognizing the company name, the doctor's confidence wavered. I donated that money immediately. Why would I keep it? I always intended to come back for Michelle one day. I spilled out the promise I'd held deep in my heart. The promise that, always suppressing my feelings, deceiving even myself, but I can't do that anymore. My life has always been intertwined with Michelle's. Today, our unexpected reunion made those feelings come flooding back. I've been making donations to Johnson General Hospital under my company name, initially just to repay that payoff money. The continuous donations were because I couldn't let go of my connection with Michelle. Maybe I was testing my own resolve. For a private clinic, donations are a lifeline. Staring intently at my card, the doctor suddenly changed his demeanor. If only you'd said so, my apologies for the misunderstanding. We're always grateful for your support. Please keep it coming. His demeanor had shifted completely. He seemed nonchalant, but was oddly ingratiating. He's probably afraid I'd get upset and stop the donations. Well, I'll leave the rest to you. With that, he made a hasty exit, leaving us all dumbfounded. The rest of us were just left in shock. Both the attending physician and the nurses had surprised looks on their faces due to the sudden change in the doctor's behavior. Well then, Keith, you will be admitted for the night. Remember, managing one's health is part of a professional's job. Be more cautious from now on. I'm sorry. I will be more careful, Rick. Thank you so much for standing up to my father so firmly. I was truly moved, thank you, Heath exclaimed with joy. I felt somewhat embarrassed. Receiving praise head-on is something I never really got used to. Michelle chuckled as she watched my reaction. Listen, Michelle, it's super late, and you might be fed up waiting, but if you're still single, I mustered up the courage to tell her that. Before I could finish, Michelle interrupted. I am single. I hadn't gotten married. I couldn't forget about you after you suddenly disappeared. The earnest look in her eyes left me speechless. After I had vanished, Michelle had confronted my father. Mother had heard what had transpired, what my father had done, and felt devastated. But she laughed, saying she never thought she wouldn't see me again. I always felt that our paths would cross again. I knew it in my heart, Michelle said. She had been looking forward to that day. Tears threatened to spill from my eyes thinking about her holding on to that tiny glimmer of hope. Every day after our separation made my heart ache. I'll bring a much nicer ring next time. As I said this, scratching my head, Michelle shook hers. I like that ring. You still have it, right? Feeling like she saw right through me, I scratched my head and responded, "You got me." Of course, I still have it. The ring that was returned to me as if to sever our ties. "I want that ring on my finger again." I nodded firmly in response to Michelle's words. At that moment, the entire treatment room erupted into applause. The doctor, nurses, and Keith all clapped their hands, saying, "Good for you," as a gesture of celebration. Suddenly, I snapped back to reality. Michelle and I weren't alone. Feeling embarrassed, I hastily left the treatment room. A few days later, Michelle and I both went to meet the doctor. At first, the doctor refused to see us, but Michelle's tears eventually won him over. "All right, I'll approve the marriage, but on one condition." The head doctor's condition was to forget about the old words, he said, which was amusing. "It's probably about that comment he made about me being an uneducated trash," I quickly replied. Of course, I wanted to register our marriage right away, but due to work, it kept getting postponed. The one who ran out of patience was Michelle, and unusually she puffed up her cheeks, raising her voice in protest at me. She hardly ever gets angry. She hesitated a bit and then complained in a soft voice, "Please don't keep me waiting any longer." Seeing Michelle blushing and speaking shyly, I realized how long I'd kept her waiting. "I'll do it right away." I stood up and left my work. I grabbed her hand and rushed to the county clerk's evening counter. Michelle said, "Wait," but I had no intention of waiting any longer. Our pace quickened, and by the time the county building was in sight, we were both running, our hands tightly holding onto each other. I swore in my heart I would never let go of this hand for the rest of my life. I know this is sudden, but can you stay at my place for a month starting next month? This utterly unexpected request came from the newly transferred female chief who had suddenly called me in. It was more than enough to throw me into a state of confusion. We were not close enough for me to be kiving at her place. "Excuse me," I stammered, taken aback. The chief blushed, fidgeting in embarrassment. Through this request from the chief, my life was about to take a significant turn. "My name is Thomas Mason. I'm 32 years old and work at an elderly care facility. I've always loved interacting with older folks since I was a kid, being quite the granny's boy, so caving is the perfect job for me. However, the caving staff at work are mostly women in their 50s and 60s. There are only two men, me and the chief. That's why the chief, and I often take on heavy lifting, and I was a little dissatisfied with the unfair division of work. But I can't voice such complaints to the female staff. The chief, who was the only one I could rely on, has already passed the age of 65 and will retire soon. Once the chief retires, will I help everyone with their work? Until now, the work was finished because the chief helped me with it. Such thoughts filled my mind, and I couldn't help but sigh. Then the chief retired in no time, and a 35-year-old female chief was assigned from another department. "My name is Kay Scott. Nice to meet you all." When she introduced herself to us, I felt that Miss Scott suddenly looked surprised when her eyes met mine and quickly averted her gaze. Then she continued with her greeting. "What's going on? Does she know me? But I don't know her." I started working with a little strange feeling. Unlike the previous chief, the new chief did not seem intimidated by the older staff in their 50s and 60s, and was not shy about giving work instructions. "Helen, one of the residents is calling you. Please attend to them. Jessica, you left meal assistance halfway to guide someone else to their room, didn't you? Please finish one task before moving on to the next." The new chief was brisk in her directives and closely observed the movements of the kiving staff, giving necessary corrections. There was no wasted motion in her work. Her directions and reminders were always on point. However, the queen bee staff, who had been there for many years, didn't like being instructed by a younger chief. She's acting high and mighty for being so young. She's getting carried away just because she's the chief. Complaints about the chief had become commonplace at work. For some reason, the chief didn't give me any work instructions. It was as if she thought, "You can handle things on your own, right?" even without her saying it. Seeing this, the queen bee staff members started complaining about the chief again. It's weird how she only gives us instructions and doesn't say anything to Thomas. She's probably just buttering him up because he's a man. Pathetic for a chief. Whenever I was in the staff room, I could always hear people badmouthing the chief. I was getting wary of hearing it, so I started spending more time chatting with the residents and less time in the staff room. However, being out of the staff room meant my paperwork wasn't progressing at all. I was getting tired of feeling like I didn't have a place at work, and my work was not moving forward. That's why I asked her for instructions. What should I do? Is there any work that I can handle? After saying that, I approached the chief on my own. Then finally, the chief said to me, "All right, then do this," and started to assign tasks to me. But the tasks given to me were things like changing sheets and cleaning the floors. It was obvious that these tasks were not kiving duties, just odd jobs. Seeing me accepting these tasks from the chief, the queen bee staff members started badmouthing the chief again behind her back. That chief, she's definitely pandering to men, changing the work she assigns based on gender and age. She's really a wicked woman. The behind-the-back talk from the queen bee staff members was only increasing day by day. I started racking my brain about how I could improve the relationships at work. During such a time, I was called by the chief to the conference room. Did I do something? I couldn't think of anything. Well, it doesn't matter. Since I was called by the chief, I might as well discuss the interpersonal issues as well. As I was walking towards the conference room with various thoughts, I noticed the chief fidgeting with an unusually embarrassed look. When I asked, is there something you need from me?" she just kept looking down without saying a word. While I was watching the chief with curiosity, she finally opened her mouth. "I'm sorry for this sudden request, but can you stay at my place for a month next month?" "What?" I was confused by the sudden, unexpected request from the chief. "I'm going on overseas training, so could you look after my cat for me?" Saying so, the chief handed me her house keys, fidgeting with a bashful look. Ah, so that's what this is about. Although I understood, I felt a strange sense of urgency about this unexpected request from the chief. Why me? Aren't there other people you could ask? When I asked the chief that, she looked at me with a blush and said, "There's no one else I can ask. That's why I'm asking you, Thomas," and gazed intently at me. Looking at the chief's embarrassed yet serious eyes, I couldn't refuse. "Well, if you're okay with me, I'll do it." As I muttered that, the chief's face lit up all at once. "Really? Well, I'm counting on you next month then," she said. Now back to work, and walked out of the meeting room with a spring in her step. I could only stand there dumbfounded, watching the cheerful figure of the chief retreat. No matter if she didn't have anyone else to ask, why me? I'm not particularly close to the chief. With those thoughts in mind, I returned to my workspace. It was strange that the chief would entrust all their personal and home matters to me, a mere employee. As I thought about various things, I felt strange about the chief's attitude and had a vague feeling. At the end of the workday, I decided I had to refuse the chief's request and stay behind in the office. However, the chief was caught up in preparing for her overseas training. She was discussing the training with the office staff, receiving explanations about the flow of the day, meeting up with the translator, and so on. In our nursing home, there is an annual overseas training program for caregivers, nurses, and dietitians. They visit countries known for their advanced welfare systems like Sweden, Denmark, and New Zealand to observe and learn about their caving techniques in local hospitals and elderly homes. Usually, experienced employees attend to reflect on their usual caving tasks, but it seems that they couldn't gather participants this year. Apparently, the caregiver who was supposed to go suddenly couldn't make it due to a family matter. It was understandable then that the chief, who had recently transferred, was suddenly set to go on overseas training next month. As the chief busied herself with preparations for the overseas training, a month passed without me being able to say a word. The spare key she had given me still remained in my bag. The day before the chief's overseas training, I wondered, is she really going tomorrow? As I stared at the key I had received from the chief and thought about various things, the chief, who was about to go on her overseas training the next day, called out to me, "Could you drop by my place after work today? From tomorrow, I'll be relying on you to take care of my home daily." Upon hearing the chief's voice, I ended up having dinner at the chief's house after work that day. For some reason, although I should be visiting the chief's house for the first time, the apartment building seemed vaguely familiar. I thought about it for a while, but, in the end, I couldn't remember anything. With a feeling of unease, I entered the chief's home. As soon as I stepped into the chief's home, something black flew across in front of me. Ha! What? As I stood there in surprise, the cat, which had been on top of the cat tower until a moment ago, dashed into the depths of the room with great speed. She's incredibly shy around people. She's never let any visitors touch her, the chief explained while putting down her bag, donning an apron, and starting to prepare dinner. Wait a minute. I've never owned a cat before. There's no way I can take care of one that's so timid. When I voiced my concerns, the chief waved me over to the kitchen and said, "Come over here." She then proceeded to teach me about the proportions and timing for preparing cat food and water. She even showed me how to clean the litter box. But even if I understand how to take care of her, I don't think I'll be able to bond with her, I sighed. The chief responded, "You don't have to force yourself to get along with her. Just make sure you feed her and take care of the litter box. That's all you need to do." I was overwhelmed by the chief and reluctantly said, "I understand." I learned only the basics of cat care from her. Then the chief hastily cooked dinner for me and left early the next morning for her overseas training program. The next day, I continued with my regular work as usual. Today as well, I was busy with work, and before I knew it, it was past the regular time. "Oh no, I have to take care of the cat," I exclaimed and quickly stood up, hastily clocked out, and headed towards the chief's house. When I arrived at the house, a swift black figure dashed past me. Looking up, I saw a cat tower next to the front door, and from it, the cat jumped down and fled into the room. Is it okay to jump down from such a high place? If this continues, she'll eventually get hurt. Saying so, I went into the room to replenish the cat's food and clean the litter box. As I did this, the cat watched me intently through a gap in the sliding door of the bedroom. Come to think of it, I hadn't asked the chief for the cat's name. I took the liberty of naming her Fluffy and tried to beckon her over, but the cat hissed in intimidation. I worried that this situation might be causing the kitty some stress. I said to her, "I'm going home now. Make sure you eat your food," and left the chief's house. For about a week, I went over to the chief's house daily. The cat seemed to find it strange that I, a stranger and not its owner, was visiting the house every day to feed it and clean its litter box. Slowly, she started venturing out from behind the sliding door of the bedroom, tentatively sniffing my back. However, she would jolt and retreat back to the bedroom whenever I moved. Despite this, I felt like I was gradually closing the distance with the cat. In order not to startle her, I'd carefully place a treat in front of her, keeping my movements to a minimum. Even though she'd contemplate returning to the bedroom for a moment, she'd sniff at the treat and take a bite. With such persistent efforts, the cat started to come near me. She would sniff the hem of my clothes, back hunched in caution. She would surely bolt at an incredible speed if I made any sudden move. I was unable to move, frozen in place for several minutes. I started work early at 7:00 a.m. and worked overtime. I ended up missing my lunch break and was famished. I desperately wanted to eat something, but I couldn't move. My hunger eventually won over, and I decided to move slowly. The chief had previously told me, "You can eat anything you find in the house." I got up as if in slow motion and went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator and scanned its contents just with my eyes. For some reason, the cat did not run away but slowly followed me, then just sat there watching me. I couldn't figure out what to eat, so I pulled out a fruit jelly that the chief had bought and placed it on the table. The cat, from under the table, looked up at me curiously as I sat there eating the fruit jelly for dinner. With all of this going on, I naturally became closer to the cat, and before I knew it, she didn't run away even when I touched her. In fact, she began to rub against me and purr. I had no idea why I was so favoured, and of course, I couldn't ask the cat. I was filled with a sense of wonder as I had never touched a cat before. I was fascinated by how soft and comforting the cat was. Without realising it, playing with the chief's cat had become my only source of comfort after a hard day's work. Today marks the final day of the chief's overseas business trip. As always, I looked forward to playing with the cat and headed over to our house. Unusually, the cat was waiting for me at the entrance. "Ah, a welcome party. Thank you," I said to the cat, giving it a scratch. As I was doing so, I felt something odd on my hand. "What's this? Was this here before?" I thought to myself. Feeling the cat's belly once again, there it was. A lump, small like a marble. I don't know anything about cats, but the thought of the cat being sick filled me with anxiety. In a panic, I looked for a 24/7 veterinary clinic in a rush. To my surprise, the vet's eyes widened in shock. "This seems to be a skin tumour. At this size, it would be very difficult to find unless you're frequently touching and checking the cat's body." "Good find," he said with a reassuring smile. He continued, "Given the small size, we can likely remove it completely with immediate surgery. We'll have to look at the pathology report for certainty, but we should schedule the surgery as soon as possible." Despite being a popular clinic with a 1-month waiting list for surgeries, it turned out there had been a recent cancellation, so I could book the surgery. I scheduled the surgery right there, and, given my worry about the cat, I decided to stay at the chief's house for the night. This house felt familiar somehow, but it wasn't a place I knew. With that thought nagging at me, I laid down on the caving room couch, petting the cat until before I knew it, I fell asleep. The following day, the chief returned from her overseas training. Was everything okay? Did anything happen? The chief rushed over to me with a worried look. "I'm fine," I stammered, then told her about the cat's illness. "What? You noticed that?" The chief was surprised. The cat, who usually didn't let anyone else touch it, had allowed me to pet it daily. After her overseas training, the chief returned to a whirlwind of preparing for a presentation at a meeting and arranging for the cat's surgery. The surgery, which I was worried about, was a success. The results of the pathological examination revealed that it was a malignant tumour. However, because it was discovered early, the cancer was completely removed, and the possibility of metastasis was considered very low. When she finally had a moment of calm, she wanted to thank me again and invited me to her house. As soon as I arrived, the cat, with its eyes shining, approached me with its tail up. Watching me and the cat, who kept rubbing up against me fervently, the chief started to speak. "You've always been such a perfect gentleman, even back then. I can see why my sister and the cat chose you." I widened my eyes and asked, "What do you mean?" But as I looked at her face, I remembered something. I was always a bit more mature than my classmates in elementary school, partly due to my physical build. I know it might sound weird to say this, but I was a bit of a heartthrob and was quietly popular among the girls. In the 6th grade, I became an official couple with my first love, and our relationship lasted until middle school. Looking at us, her sister would watch us with an envious look, like, "You guys are lucky." "Could it be you're the sister of my first love?" When I said that to the chief, she laughed with a bright smile and said, "Did you just notice?" Then she told me a story. After my first love, and I broke up in middle school, her parents divorced. Her sister went to live with their mother, and the chief went with their father. Their father passed away from cancer a few years ago. She hasn't been able to get in touch with her sister or her mother. Feeling left behind and lonely, Kay started keeping a cat a few years ago. This house is actually her childhood home, but it's changed a lot recently as the area has been developed into a new residential area. The apartment was also renovated, which is why I didn't recognize it. To distract herself from her loneliness, she had been putting on a brave face at work. Then she was transferred to my department, and we were reunited. "I secretly had a crush on you as I watched how seriously you cared about my sister," she said, smiling shyly. Unlike when she was at work, she had a really kind and cute atmosphere. I felt an electric shock course through me, blindsided by this unexpected revelation of our past connection. From that moment, I found myself frequently visiting her house to see the cat. "You've done so much for the cat." "It's gotten much better thanks to you." "I can't thank you enough." She'd repeatedly expressed her gratitude. To which I replied that I wanted something in return. When she asked what I wanted, without missing a beat, I pointed towards the entrance hall and said, "I'll take that." She looked confused until I held up the spare keys to her house. This is what I meant. Understanding dawned on her, and her cheeks flushed a sweet pink. She was so cute that I hugged her. From that day on, our relationship officially started. "Just keep it quiet at work, okay?" she asked shyly. I noticed a softening in her personality since we started dating. Hasn't the chief been particularly nice to us lately? Maybe something good happened to her. Has she got a boyfriend now? As I watched her laugh off the remarks from the Queen Bee staff, I felt a sense of relief and couldn't help but smirk. I hope you enjoyed the story. Subscribing to the channel can be a great motivation for us. See you in the next video. Don't come to the wedding, Dad, please. I'm begging you. If you come, I'll cut ties with you as a father, rejected from attending my daughter Emily's wedding. I felt deeply hurt. Emily's harsh words keep echoing in my head. I've been betrayed by my family again. My name is Jack, 44 years old. My wife's name was Jennifer. She would have been 42 if she were still alive. It's not that she died or anything. She went missing 10 years ago. So I just say if she were alive when I mention her. Jennifer, and I had one daughter, Emily, now 20 years old. After graduating from high school, she moved out to live on her own. Jennifer disappeared when Emily was in 4th grade. She left without leaving a single note. I thought she might have gotten involved in some incident and reported her missing to the police, but there's been no word at all. At first, Emily was deeply saddened by her mother's absence, but one day she seemed to have come to terms with it. "Dad, even without Mom, let's do our best together," she said. Her brave words made me, a father, burst into tears. I only told my parents in the countryside that Jennifer was gone. My father was silent, and my mother was exasperated, saying, "See, I told you so." There was a reason why my parents were so cold to me. In my despair, my hometown is in rural Nebraska. We're farmers, known locally as a wealthy family. I met Jennifer while attending a university in New York and fell deeply in love with her, dropping out to marry her. Luckily, I got a job in New York, and once things looked stable for Jennifer and me, we went to my hometown to formally register our marriage. When my father saw Jennifer, he didn't say a word and went back inside, while my mother looked at us with an indescribable expression. "Dad, that's rude to Jennifer," I said. "Mom, you think so too, right?" When Jennifer wasn't around, and I was alone with Mom, I mentioned Jennifer, but she opposed the marriage. "Jack, don't marry that girl. She's not the right one for you. Jennifer will betray you. You'll just get hurt at their groundless accusations." I returned to New York with Jennifer and registered our marriage. It was almost like coping. When we visited my parents, Jennifer was already pregnant with Emily, making it a shotgun wedding. In hindsight, my parents couldn't have been happy about me dropping out of university and having a shotgun wedding with a woman they didn't know. But Jennifer and I, driven by youth, were happy. Emily was born safely, and even though we were poor, we lived modestly as a family of 3. With my salary alone insufficient, Jennifer also started working part-time. Initially, she worked day shifts, but then she started working as a hostess in a bar for better pay. Already beautiful, Jennifer became even more glamorous and appealing to men after becoming a night worker. I resented this change, but blamed my poor earnings and worked hard at my job. Emily, growing up and attending kindergarten and then elementary school, seemed to realize our family was different. Still, I desperately wanted to protect our 3-person family. Feeling betrayed by my parents who opposed our marriage, I couldn't let go of that resentment. Then Jennifer disappeared. After she was gone, I did everything to raise Emily on my own. I couldn't leave young Emily alone, so I avoided overtime and working on holidays as much as possible. The company sympathized with me, but they weren't a charity. Unable to comply with the company's demands, they eventually suggested I resign voluntarily. As a 34-year-old single father, I couldn't afford to leave my job. Who would hire a middle-aged man with a child? Despite my resistance, I was laid off under the guise of downsizing. This feels just like a movie I saw on TV a long time ago. Sitting in the park during the day, opening a can of beer, I grumbled to myself. The movie, starring Dustin Hoffman, was about a man whose wife left him, raising their child alone, and then losing his job. The ending, if I remember correctly, was that the wife who ran away remarried, taking the son away from the protagonist. Shaking off these unpleasant thoughts, I started looking for a job again. Despite being laid off, as the saying goes, when one door closes, another opens, and I found a new job 2 months later. It was a smaller company with a lower salary, but it was better than being unemployed. So I endured working every day, even though I was often yelled at by my younger colleagues. Back when Jennifer was around, she made good money as a hostess, allowing Emily to live quite lavishly. But after she started living with me, we had to live frugally. Becoming poor and being teased about it at school, Emily began to rebel against me. "Dad, why are we so poor? It's embarrassing. I don't even want to go to school," she confided. I comforted and persuaded Emily, who was in tears, to go to school somehow. But one day, after seeing how tired I was from work, and yet still trying hard, Emily stopped rebelling against me. "Let's do our best, even without Mom." Her bright attitude was a saving grace for me. The neighbours, perhaps feeling sympathetic towards a father and daughter living alone, took care of us in various ways, whether it was dinner or clothes for Emily. Some people were kind enough to help. One of them was a woman named Ashley who lived in the same apartment. She was the same age as me, 34, single, and worked at a government office. By a strange twist of fate, her father was from Nebraska just like me, and he was a senior in middle school to my father. It's really strange, such a coincidence in this big city of New York, Ashley said, and took care of Emily without asking for anything in return. It's embarrassing to say, but Emily is a girl. Naturally, there are things about girls' underwear that a man wouldn't understand. When I confided this to Ashley, she laughed and said, "It's okay. It must be hard for a man," and kindly gave advice. What surprised me the most was when Ashley mentioned that they went shopping for Emily's bra. I was so surprised. I asked Ashley, "Has Emily grown up that much?" And she casually replied, "Yes, the growth of a girl is fast, Jack. You might be a grandfather before you know it." Ashley laughed as she said this, and I jokingly replied, "Please don't scare me like that." I truly believed Emily was growing up bright and honest. But there was one time when Emily really shocked me. It was when she was in middle school. We were barely making ends meet, and I was struggling to gather enough money for Emily's school trip. Considering pawning the wedding ring I had with Jennifer, when I was deep in thought, Emily came up and asked me what was wrong. Not wanting to burden Emily with unnecessary worries, I simply told her that I was considering pawning our wedding ring. I thought she would object, but her response was unexpected. "Why not pawn it?" she asked. Choked, I explained it was a memento of her mother and me. Emily picked up the ring and asked, "What is this, Dad?" I said it was a ring filled with memories of her mother, and Emily replied, "No, it's just an object. Objects can all be turned into money." Her harsh view left me speechless, and realizing my reaction, she smiled and said, "You're right. It's a ring filled with memories of Mom, so we should treasure it." Emily's smile reminded me of Jennifer's. When Emily started high school, she expressed a desire to get a part-time job. Apparently, she wanted to help with our household finances. As her father, I wanted Emily to focus on her studies and extracurricular activities. I never imagined asking my daughter, in the prime of her youth, to help support our family financially. Yet Emily insisted on getting a part-time job. When I asked if there was something she wanted to buy, she bravely answered that there wasn't anything in particular. She just wanted to help with the household expenses. I allowed Emily to take a part-time job on the condition that she continued to excel in her studies. "Thank you, Dad," she said, hugging me. It had been years since she had done that, and I felt a bit of ease. True to her promise, Emily was an honour student at school and worked part-time whenever she had free time. It seems she was working as a waitress at a family restaurant. As a high schooler, Emily, who resembled her mother Jennifer, began to exude an adult allure. She learned to apply makeup and slowly started dressing more flamboyantly, which led me to express my concerns. I was worried because it reminded me of how Jennifer gradually transformed into a nighttime entertainer. Emily listened to me and stopped wearing heavy makeup and flashy fashion, which relieved me, but I still had some doubts. It was because of the perfume she wore, the same scent Jennifer used to wear. I wondered if she was changing her clothes and doing her makeup outside the house. Even if she changed before coming home, the perfume scent would linger. I felt betrayed by my own family. There should be no lies within a family. Family members must trust each other. Thus, I dismissed my suspicions about Emily. The time I spent with Emily gradually decreased. Emily spent her holidays immersed in part-time work. I felt a touch of loneliness as she was even away from home during Christmas and New Year's. When I confided this to Ashley, she comforted me, saying, "She's a girl. She has her social life. But Emily is a good girl." Being a father can be lonely, I thought. All I could do for my only family, Emily, was to leave her as much money as possible after I'm gone. So I put more effort into my work. Emily graduated from high school without any trouble. I encouraged her to pursue higher education, but she gently declined, saying it wasn't necessary. I truly felt like an inadequate father. Emily got a job as an office worker at a small company. Although it was a small company, it was part of a well-known corporate group, making it quite an achievement for a high school graduate to get a job there. People asked if I had connections, but being without any, I could only say we were lucky. Emily started living alone in an apartment close to her workplace. I asked to visit once, but she refused. I figured she didn't want her father invading her territory. Living alone in my apartment, I led a solitary life. All I could think about was how to leave as much money as possible for Emily. Then one day I received a text from Emily. She had found someone she loved and was going to get married. That was all it said. Shocked, I called her, and she confirmed what was in the text. I bombarded her with questions. What kind of man is he? I'd like to meet him. What about the wedding? Her answers were evasive. He's a good person, so don't worry. The wedding will be simple. You don't need to come, she insisted. But the groom's family will be there, right? They might find it strange if I'm not there. I should attend the wedding. To this, Emily started to get irritated. Anyway, Dad, don't come to the wedding. I'm begging you. If you do, I'll cut ties with you as a parent and child. Emily said that and hung up the phone. I was confused but had no choice but to accept it. Noticing my dejected state, Ashley, aware of my distress, urged me to talk about it. Unable to do so, the day of the wedding arrived. Despite being told not to attend, I still wanted to sneak a glimpse of Emily's groom. So, I secretly made my way to the wedding venue. I learned of the venue due to a mix-up, receiving a call from the venue staff. As I peeked into the hall, I saw Emily dressed in a pure white wedding gown, happily talking with a tall, gentle-looking young man. That must be the man who would become Emily's husband, and he seemed sincere and trustworthy. I felt relieved. Suddenly, Emily turned and beckoned someone. A man and woman of the same age as me appeared. It was a missing Jennifer and a man I didn't recognize. Why is Jennifer here? Who is the man beside her? And why is Emily behaving as if it's normal for Jennifer to be here? Questions flooded my mind. Hiding behind a pillar, I strained my ears and heard Emily's voice. "This is my mom, and this is my dad. Look, she is beautiful, isn't she?" "Yeah, I am surprised. Your mom, sure, but what does your dad do?" My dad's soon-to-be husband asked curiously. How should I put it? Kind of like the difference between a new laptop and an old laptop, you know. Inside, I retorted at her analogy, but Jennifer looked resolved. Long time no see, Jack. I hear you're still poor, Emily told me. She mocked me, and Emily joined in. I've been patient, but I'll say it now. I hate being poor. I was ridiculed at school for it, so I went along with Mum's plan. Dad, or should I say former dad, came from a wealthy family. I'm waiting for the day a huge inheritance falls into my lap. To me, you were nothing more than that. In contrast, my new dad is wealthy. I love him. He gave me lots of presents for my birthday and Christmas. His connections got me my current job. I felt nothing upon hearing this. All I thought was not to leave her a single penny of my assets. In the silence, a man yelled out, "Emily, what do you think parents are for?" It was Emily's would-be husband. My family was poor too, raised by a single dad. I never resented him. He loved me. And you're here saying you hate being poor and love the wealthy. That's the lowest. I decided to approach Jennifer and Emily for a final goodbye. Congratulations on your wedding, Emily. I won't see you again, I said. Jennifer and Emily froze upon seeing me, and Jennifer's affair partner asked curiously, "Emily, who is this? He looks like you." Jennifer replied, "Emily's soon-to-be husband." Then I finally began to grasp the situation. So that's how it was. Don't come to the wedding, Dad. I'll cut ties if you do. Being refused to attend my daughter Emily's wedding ceremony, her cold words echoed repeatedly in my mind. I was betrayed by my family again. Jennifer didn't just disappear, from the words about eloping. With a husband, it became clear to me that Jennifer had run away with her lover. Emily's sudden change of mood the day she became resolute must have been because she was in contact with Jennifer, and I was deceived all this time, just like the ending of that Dustin Hoffman movie I saw long ago. I decided to approach Jennifer and Emily for a final goodbye. Congratulations on your wedding, Emily. I won't see you again, I said. Jennifer and Emily froze upon seeing me. Jennifer's affair partner, Emily, asked curiously, "Who is this? He looks like you." How should I put it? Kind of like the difference between a new laptop and an old laptop, you know. I retorted at her analogy. But Jennifer looked resolved. "Long time no see, Jack. I hear you're still poor," Emily told me, mocking me. Emily joined in. "I've been patient, but I'll say it now. I hate being poor. I was ridiculed at school for it, so I went along with my dad's plan. Dad, or should I say former dad, came from a wealthy family. I'm waiting for the day a huge inheritance falls into my lap. To me, you were nothing more than that. In contrast, my new dad is wealthy. I love him. He gave me lots of presents for my birthday and Christmas. His connections got me my current job. I felt nothing upon hearing this. All I thought was not to leave her a single penny of my assets. In the silence, a man yelled out, "Emily, what do you think parents are for?" It was Emily's would-be husband. My family was poor too, raised by a single dad. I never resented him. He loved me. And you're here saying you hate being poor and love the wealthy. That's the lowest. I won't marry you. He left after his declaration. Jennifer and Emily panicked. Jennifer ran after Emily's former fiancé. Emily came to me. "Sorry, it was just a joke. Let's make up. Our family feud ends here," she continued. "Please, hey Dad, go calm him down, please," she pleaded. I ignored her. I had an important business meeting to attend. Outside the venue, a luxury car was parked, and Ashley said from inside, "Is the greeting done?" because it's almost time. I just said I understood and got into the car. Emily looked puzzled and asked me what it meant. I explained the situation, thinking about leaving as much money as possible for Emily. I reconciled with my parents after she left home, and I had to ask my parents for a favor to help me start up a company after you left. Ashley and I started dating. Ashley used to be an illustrator as a hobby, so we set up an advertising company together. I'm the president, and she draws. It was a huge hit, especially with corporations. In just 2 years, we experienced rapid growth. Now our annual turnover has reached $1 million. Emily's eyes widened. In a completely different tone, she said with a smirk, "Now, Daddy, I love you." Emily contorted her body. It was the first time I found my own daughter repulsive. Silently, I closed the car door and headed to the hotel where my business partner was waiting. Ashley and I sat side by side in the backseat of the car. Wasn't there a movie with Dustin Hoffman that had an ending like this? Ashley asked. Yeah, The Graduate, where he steals the bride from the wedding and runs away, I replied. Kramer versus Kramer, and now The Graduate. Seems I have a connection with Dustin Hoffman, I said with a wry smile. Half a year later, after all these events, Jennifer and Emily wanted to meet. I refused, but they came to the company and I couldn't escape. We talked for just 5 minutes in the president's office. 2 women heavily made up, wearing flashy clothes and reeking of perfume, entered the president's office. It was Jennifer and Emily. They were running a small bar together, a dingy one at that. Apparently, Jennifer's affair partner messed up at work and got fired. He's the same age as me now, unemployed. Jennifer, still legally married to me, said she wanted to start over. I also asked Jennifer, divorce. I'm going to officially remarry Ashley. This is the perfect opportunity for that, I said. Emily retorted, Dad, how could you have an affair with a woman like Ashley while Mom is still here? You womanizer. How far gone is she? When I ignored her, she said, Hey, forget about Mom. Just help me out. Isn't it just us, parent and child? Emily was rotten to the core. When I gave Ashley a look, she whispered, I'm carrying Jack's daughter in my womb, so she'll be my little sister. Let her call me Big Sister. Emily was deeply unsettling. I called the security guards to escort them out of the president's office. Ashley safely gave birth to a daughter later. The doctors were amazed that she safely delivered despite it being a late pregnancy. I petitioned the family court to disinherit Emily. It's called disinheritance, Ashley said. It wasn't necessary, but I couldn't stand Emily's rotten character. As I looked at my daughter's sleeping face, pondering if it was my fault that Emily turned out that way, I reflected. My daughter's name is Michelle. I hope she will cover my painful memories with her existence. This guy only has a high school diploma, but he's always showing off, saying, I work at a hospital. I bet he doesn't even do any significant work at the hospital. Such a pointless dude at a social mixer where I was the wingman. I constantly felt belittled by a classmate. He never missed an opportunity to assert his superiority. I was fed up with him. However, he didn't know the real me. Coincidentally, there was a woman at the mixer who knew my true identity. I reluctantly revealed it upon hearing it. That classmate was flabbergasted. My name is Tim. I am a 28-year-old man currently working as a doctor in a hospital. I lost my mother to an illness when I was in middle school and was raised in a single-parent household by my dad. The experience of losing my mom to illness inspired me to become a doctor. It was a challenging journey, but I eventually earned my medical license and am now practicing medicine. However, whenever people find out I'm a doctor, they always have something to say. So, I just mentioned that I work at a hospital without going into specifics. I haven't been specific about my profession. Due to this, some acquaintances have misunderstood my actual profession. One of them is a guy named Mike, someone I've known since elementary school. I wouldn't call him a friend due to his character. Mike went to the same school for elementary, middle, and high school. He graduated from a national university, is a salesman for a major company, and is a man of flamboyant appearance and lifestyle. Even I, as a guy, have to admit he's handsome. His whole appearance screams money. There are rumors that he once spent tens of thousands of dollars in a single night at a club in downtown Las Vegas. So you get the impression he's a real ladies' man. But inside he is the worst kind of man, a scum to be honest. Even if he's dating a specific girl, he thinks nothing of making moves on other women. He can't handle his liar, and whether he has a girlfriend or not, he's always throwing parties. It's so much like that's the status of a man to do something like that. But actually, he was brought up in a normal family. I've told him several times that you should stop such behavior, but it doesn't seem to get through to him. You might wonder why I'm still in touch with such a guy. It's because he keeps inviting me to his mixers. It all started about a year ago when I bumped into Mike downtown after not having spoken since high school. He recognized me and approached. We were classmates, so he vaguely remembered my face. "Hey, are you Tim?" When I saw Mike, who was already dressed in full-body luxury brand stuff, from then on, I didn't really know who he was at first. "Who might you be?" I found myself asking. "Come on, man, it's me, Mike Williams, your classmate from senior year of high school." Even with that, I couldn't quite place him. That's because he looked completely different from when we were in high school. I don't recall having such a flashy guy in our class back then. It wasn't until he showed me a photo from high school on his phone that I exclaimed, "Oh, it's you." "Actually, I'm surprised you recognize me," I admitted. "You look exactly the same as you did in high school," he chuckled. "So, what are you up to these days?" he asked. "Me, I work at a hospital now." "You work at a hospital? You didn't go to college, did you?" he inquired. "All right, that's the story," I replied, just as we were about to dive into old times. For some reason, Mike remarked, "So you're basically saying you went straight from high school to being unemployed and now work at a hospital, right?" "No, that's not it," I tried to clarify, but he wasn't listening. He had made up his mind. "Working at a hospital is a big deal for a guy who just has a high school diploma," he concluded. "I don't just have a high school diploma," I retorted. "Well, whether you're a medical admin or a janitor, it's all hospital work, I get it. Men want to show off," he continued. Moreover, for some reason, he sympathized with me and said, "I feel bad for you, Tim. I'll invite you to our group hangouts." And that's how I started getting invitations almost every time. To be honest, even if I go to these hangouts, Mike always looks down on me by calling me just a high school grad and makes fun of that fact, laughing about it. Honestly, it feels like I'm just being made a fool of. And his personality is terrible, to be honest. Sometimes I don't even know why I go out with him every time, and I end up with a look of emptiness on my face. However, the guy has impeccable taste in restaurants, never misses on the food choice, and even offers to cover the cab fare home. To me, it feels like I'm just going out for a free delicious meal. So, here I am again, called by Mike to make up the numbers attending yet another gathering. Today's outing was supposed to be a 5-on-5 mixer, and the ladies were all nurses, peers in my field, which felt a tad refreshing. Mike seemed quite pumped up, stating, I'm definitely getting a date tonight. By the way, he's supposedly seeing someone right now, but that doesn't stop him from hosting these meetings. It's human nature to seek out new connections, even if you're already dating someone, he'd say. As usual, his audacity almost feels refreshing. Tonight's venue is a fancy private dining room with a view overlooking New York. Mike had told me to dress sharp, so I wore the only decent jacket I had. Upon seeing me, the first thing out of Mike's mouth was, "Isn't that a bit plain?" "That's all I have," I replied. "Well, you're just a high school grad. It makes sense you'd have less money than me. You'll be perfect as the wingman," he teased. I wanted to tell him off, but I held my tongue. "All right, everyone, cheers." With Mike's call, the gathering officially began. We clinked glasses, and I took a sip of my draft beer. Although it was supposed to be a 5-on-5 mixer, only Mike and I showed up on the guy's side. The other three apparently flaked out. But the fewer men, the more chance for Mike to mingle with the ladies. He seemed to be in high spirits. The women chosen by Mike's impeccable taste were all incredibly beautiful. Last-minute no-shows happen now and then, but 3 at once is quite rare. Every time, I wonder just how unpopular Mike is. But then again, I also question my sanity for showing up almost every time he asks. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight. I know we have some notable absences, but let's enjoy with the looks we have, Mike, still in high spirits, exclaimed. "Thank you for having us," the ladies cheerfully responded. Then one of the women turned to me and said, "You are Tim Miller." "I work in a hospital." "Nice to meet you," I replied, trying to keep it simple. Suddenly, the chatter among the 5 ladies went like, "What? No way. Perhaps they think I'm plain compared to Mike." Today, Mike's in his usual designer suit, whereas I'm just in regular clothes. Several minutes into the group date, Mike quickly nestled himself among the ladies, just like always. He was going on and on, boasting about his job and the luxury brands he owns. The ladies seemed to be enjoying his stories, laughing and giggling, making Mike even more cheerful. They'd had quite a lot to drink, and it seemed like Mike was pretty tipsy. As for me, I was enjoying my meal, especially the salmon ceviche, thinking, this is a lively group. There's never a mess when Mike picks the place. Both the drinks and the food are always on point. It felt like it had turned into a 1-on-5 date. Every now and then, the ladies chatting with Mike would glance over at me or whisper something. Although I was engrossed in my meal, I noticed this. Mike said to one of the women, Hey, Michelle, aren't I way cooler than him?" Wrapping his arm around her and pulling her close, Michelle, whom he referred to, giggled and said, "Oh, stop it." I thought to myself that the atmosphere felt like one of those kinds of places. Then Mike said, "This guy, him man. He's been my buddy since elementary school, you know." Despite only having a high school diploma, he always brags about working at a hospital. I bet he's not even doing anything significant there. What a joke. Mike continued, "And this guy, back in high school, he didn't stand out in class. Almost a nerd, only focusing on studies and part-time jobs. Even with all that studying, he didn't go to college. Probably because he grew up in a poor, single-parent household. Once that happens, man, life's pretty much over." Mike laughed loudly, while the women looked taken aback hearing Mike's words. I sighed. "Mike, you've had too much to drink. Take it easy, man." I placed a glass of water in front of him and got up. "What's the matter? Running away?" Mike cheered, ignoring me. I headed to the restroom. Mike's nasty attitude when drunk isn't new, and the demeaning comments he makes about me are routine. It doesn't bother me anymore, but it's always a mood killer. so it's best to excuse myself. Man, he's drunk again today. Can't just leave him like that. I'll just tune out the rest. Every time Mike goes to a mixer, he ends up like that, so I can't just leave him there. Can't really leave him with the ladies either, I thought as I walked out of the restroom. Someone suddenly approached. You're the director, right? The one who said that was Mabel, one of the participants of tonight's mixer who had introduced herself earlier. Her eyes widened at the mention of director, and she continued, I work as a nurse in the pediatrics department at 7 Stars Hospital. All the girls here tonight are nurses from 7 Stars Hospital. Upon hearing this, I couldn't help but exclaim, really? 7 Stars Hospital is where I currently serve as the director. Mike seems to be misunderstanding something, but aside from being a doctor, I also work as a hospital director. However, once people find out I'm the director, many so-called acquaintances with ulterior motives approach me, so I usually just say I work in the hospital. I'm not lying by saying that, but I never expected that tonight's group of girls would be nurses from our hospital. You don't interact much with the staff, do you, director? Seems Mabel picked up on my thoughts and gave a smile. From what I gathered, all these girls are in charge of the inpatient wards. I've been busy with hospital management conferences and such, and I seldom visit the inpatient wards. Moreover, I usually leave the hiring interviews for non-doctors to the head nurse, administrative head, or HR head, so I don't often recognize the nurses with a large hospital like ours. It's understandable, but everyone knows your name, at least. Mabel said, her smile a touch mischievous. I'm sorry. I apologized and vowed to remember from now on. Just so you know, we all recognized you, director, Mabel said. What? I wasn't sure back then, but when I heard the same name, I thought it might be you. It's quite surprising and amusing to find the director at a mixer. Ha! But why does Mike think you're just a regular hospital employee without a college degree? That's a fair question. Well, he just took my words about working at the hospital at face value. I explained the whole story. I see. So, Mike doesn't know the real you. It's not that much of a secret, but yeah, something like that. I laughed, but she seemed deep in thought. Let's head back, she suggested. I followed her back to our table. You know, having a college degree really matters. People like Tim who only finished high school, they just are not accepted in society, you know. A drunk Mike was still going on with his story. How can he not run out of things to say about the same topic? I sighed, but I knew there was no handling him in that state. The last time I tried to take a drunk Mike home, he acted like a baby, saying, No way, I ain't going home yet, and started throwing a fit on the floor. I'd rather not remember that fiasco. Best to just leave him be. I felt bad for the girls, but they'd have to put up with him. I ordered a whiskey highball from the waiter and nibbled on some pasta. Then Mabel sat next to me, asking, Is the pasta good, director? I nearly spit out my drink and pasta, director. Whoa! Hearing Mel's words, Mike turned our way. This guy, Tim, he's the director of the hospital where we work. Moreover, here's his medical license in Switzerland. He's quite the accomplished doctor. Then the remaining 4 women came over, saying, I knew it. And I thought so. For some reason, all the women now gathered around me. I heard the director often attends conferences and is on business trips, so it's rare to meet you, but I had a feeling it was you. I was curious ever since I heard the name. One after another started chatting with me. Well, since we're off duty now, you don't have to call me director, but thank you all for working so hard every day. I managed to reply. We appreciate it, but a bonus would be nice indeed. The ladies all laughed together. The reason I became a doctor was because of the illness that took my mother's life when I was in middle school. I visited her almost every day while she was hospitalized, and seeing her suffer during her treatments made me want to save those in pain. To become a doctor, you need to go to medical school. Intuition is far from cheap. I couldn't afford to fail or repeat a year, so I studied hard. Given the high cost of med school, I even started a part-time job so I wouldn't be a burden to my father. High school felt like it was just studying and working, just like Mike said. In school, I was always hitting the books and working my side jobs all the time. I was so swamped every day that I don't remember having a typical teenage experience during that time. I heard that there was ongoing research in Switzerland about the disease that caused my mother's death. There were rumors that a cure might be found soon. It seems that such research is indeed advancing in Switzerland. So I decided to get my medical degree there, not in the US. Thankfully, I was good at German and French, had decent grades, and thought I'd have a better chance at finding a cure there. I discussed it with my father, who gave his blessing, and right after high school, I went to Switzerland on my own. To be honest, I didn't tell any of my classmates. It might be because I was too engrossed in studying and working, and I didn't have close friends. But I also didn't want any fuss about my decision to go to Switzerland. I got into a university and managed to get my medical license there. I also joined a team researching the disease and led a busy life as both a researcher and a doctor. And a few years ago, we finally established a cure for the disease. It's now treatable. But that meant my personal goal was achieved sooner than expected. While I was pondering what to do next, I got a call from Dr. Smith, a renowned authority on cardiology and a member of our team. Since my specialization also includes cardiology, I personally referred to Dr. Smith as Master. He proposed, "Tim, how about coming back to the States and becoming the director of one of our affiliate hospitals? We have a hospital in our medical group that we'd like to revamp. We're thinking of bringing in a young director to draw attention. Having a young director who's returned from overseas would be a great selling point. Plus, I like your dedication." Do I come across that way? Not everyone would go abroad to study medicine and research a cure, I replied. Why not try that passion as a hospital director? He suggested. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I could handle such a significant responsibility, but I decided to accept the offer. And about a year ago, I was entrusted with 7 Stars Hospital. But as a director, I feel I still have much to learn. Every day, Catherine, one of the attendees, told me, "Doctor, you always look so serious in the hallways. I thought you were much more intimidating," and laughed. Well, every day I'm anxious if I'm doing a good job as the director, and I can't help but furrow my brow, I replied. Don't worry, the current hospital really feels so homely. Exactly. The fact that they encourage not working overtime is great. As a director, at least I can do that. I don't want to work overtime either, Catherine said. The conversation unexpectedly took an exciting turn. While Mike was so shocked, he lost his words when he found out that I'm actually the head of a hospital. The women around me, including myself, were all excited, and then there was no one left around Mike. Seems like he got upset with the situation and was drinking his booze alone, looking pretty bored. Hearing about my role as a hospital director, it seems his buzz wore right off. He mumbled, "What the hell? You're the one with just a high school diploma." Well, truth be told, I didn't just finish high school. I graduated from a university in Switzerland. I replied with a wry smile. Anyway, Mike, I'm sorry, especially since you invited me. I'm not sure if it'll make it up to you, but I'll cover the bill tonight. Saying so, I took out my card and handed him $100. This should cover your cab fare for tonight. You've always been covering for me, I said. Don't worry about it. I might have been a high school grad from a single-parent low-income family here, but now I'm a director, I continued. Mike, with a frustrated look, just left the bar, and the group date came to an end. As it turned out, Mabel and I were headed in the same direction, so we decided to walk together. Director, you really take care of everyone, don't you? Mabel remarked. Oh, do I? If it were anyone else after being looked down upon like that for supposedly being just a high school grad, you would have left in anger. That happens all the time. I'm used to it, and I didn't want to leave the ladies in that situation. That's what makes you care. You're always putting up with it, right? That makes you a good person in my book, she said with a laugh. But why did you reveal my identity there? Because seeing you ridiculed like that, when I know how capable you really are, I couldn't keep silent. Plus, you're quite popular among the staff, so maybe you should mingle with everyone more. Wait, I'm popular? I asked, surprised. Yes, you became a director at such a young age, and everyone is eager to hear about your experiences in Switzerland, she explained. I had no idea. Being a director keeps me busy. Maybe from tomorrow, I'll try to interact more with everyone. Please do, Tim, Mabel laughed. The next day, while I was having lunch in the hospital's cafeteria, 5 of the female nurses from last night's mixer approached me, saying thank you for last night quite loudly. In fact, this caused a stir among the other staff members. What? The director went on a mixer. You know, the director was seriously looked down upon yesterday. The chatter began, and by evening, that talk had spread throughout the entire hospital. From that day on, other doctors would approach me, saying, "Hey, director, invite me to your next mixer too." From then on, I started actively engaging with other doctors, nurses, and staff. Although the catalyst was the mixer story, I felt I couldn't miss out on this opportunity. People always thought you, the director, were a pretty stiff type, but turns out you're quite approachable. I heard you've been attending those mixers quite a bit, they said, and I could only respond with a smile. From then on, I continued to engage like that, and I felt the overall vibe in the hospital started to improve. Even my mentor, Dr. Smith, who happened to visit the hospital, mentioned, "The hospital has become so much more welcoming. Good thing we left it in your hands, Tim." This made me more determined than ever to excel in my role as director. After that mixer, I began to regularly dine out with Mabel, and our relationship naturally progressed. A few years later, I proposed to Mabel. Of course, she said, "Yes, I'll do my best to support you, Tim. I've always had many responsibilities like the hospital, its staff, and all the patients who rely on us. But now I have one more precious thing to protect," I confessed. "I carry that weight every day. I'm not always sure if I'm making the best choices, but to keep everyone happy, I think I'll always give it my all, even if it means relying on others at times."